All right, let's get started.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We are going to be talking about the mtc.ca.gov website and sharing some of our experiences and some of the features we think is really great about this website. My name is Jen Lampton. I am a Drupal developer. I've been using Drupal for 15 years and 1 week, according to my profile, which I checked yesterday. For the MTC site, I was the original developer of the Drupal 7 site. And for the Drupal 9 site we're going to be showing you today, I was more of a architecture lead, working with our team of other developers this time. I have been working with Carrie for that entire time, the entire Drupal 7 site, as well as Drupal 9, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carrie DeLucchi. I'm the principal at Peak Digital. I've been working with Drupal as long as I've been working with Jen and working with government agencies a couple more years beyond that. My role on this project is information architecture, project manager, account manager, and quality assurance. Um, and yeah, it's really nice to meet everybody. In that I cannot see. And, I guess with that, we'll get started. Hang on. All right, just we wanted to give you a little bit of background. Um, MTC is the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. They manage a lot of transportation, um, funding and planning throughout the entire Bay Area. Um, And in 2019, they began an effort to make all of their websites Section 508 compliant with accessibility standards. So Jen and I and our team at Peak Digital, we manage several of MTC's websites, many of which we have built and designed. And then we've also have some that we haven't, but we're supporting them in operations and maintenance. And in 2019, we started making all of their websites accessible to meet these accessibility standards. And then once Drupal 7 was announced that it would be sunset, we started talking about updating the sites from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9. So all of the sites that were getting accessibility work were also going to be updated to Drupal 9. We did that work last year in 2020. The MTC site, which is their flagship site, is the only site of our group of sites that we were able to do a redesign with as well during that effort of migrating or updating from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9. And accessibility was really the driving force of that decision. They have a huge website, they have tons of content, and they have a real obligation, which they take incredibly seriously, to communicate transparency to the public. And so this was an exciting project for us. We had a pretty tight deadline for the size of the project. And I'm going to roll right into our site goals just to kind of establish where we're headed here in this presentation as well. You can stop us and ask questions at any point in time. Also, we will be stopping for questions kind of halfway through. So um, just keep in mind you'll have an opportunity to ask some questions. So, um, in any kind of website redesign or rebuild, there's a ton of planning, and we did discovery. We met with over 30 stakeholders. We did competitive analysis. Um, and through that effort, we determined some site goals, and I'm going to go through them quickly here. We wanted to apply the agency-wide web standards and technical requirements, improve content accuracy, and build trust with the users, design a user-centered site that feels approachable, and build a site that's easy to use and sustainable by staff members. And then finally, communicate accessibility, equity, and transparency. MTC has a difficult task of having to give a lot of policy information on their website. And at the same time, they want to appeal to the average person. So that is always the two target audiences that we were holding. How do we give them, how do we, by requirement, provide all of this technical information, but also make it incredibly friendly to use and approachable? So that's where we're headed with our site goals. And then we're going to jump into um, we're going to jump into kind of how we met these goals, and we're going to kind of skip the sitemap and wireframings and the designs and everything we did in planning to prepare ourselves to build the site quickly. And we're going to jump right into development.
So we had a couple of goals in terms of creating a really strong editorial experience as well. There are a lot of people that have negative feelings about Drupal's editorial experience, and we wanted to show them that we could build them a great Drupal site that was so easy for people to use, even if they hadn't seen Drupal before, or if they had seen Drupal before and didn't like it. So we spent a lot of time customizing the forms that the editors were going to be using and trying to make it easy for them to find what they needed to edit. We also wanted to make sure administrators had the level of access they needed to do what they need to do on a daily basis, but we didn't want to give them too much access so that they could do anything that might accidentally cause harm to their own user account or the site in general. So trying to balance those two needs was also something we spent a lot of time on working on the site. Security was also really important to the MTC team. And one of the things we set up almost immediately was a password policy that required that all of the people who were logging into the website had a really strong password. And we also set it up so that it would require that the password be changed fairly frequently. This did reach a little bit of pushback from the folks at MTC, and so we were able to promote the use of Password Manager, which we also hope is going to improve their general behavior around security on the web. We do regular security reviews on the website to make sure that any of the stuff that we're adding in terms of views and stuff has the correct permissions set. We check every week for security updates to all of the Drupal modules and Drupal core. We've written them extensive security documentation on how their websites are set up, and we've converted that into a checklist that they can use to compare against any new Drupal site that they get or hand to any new team that they have building websites for them, so that all sites are maintained in the same way. We also created a custom module for them we refer to as the MTC profile. And this helps us create the same set of features and the same sort of editorial experience across all of the websites that we maintain for them. And this is because they have editors that have different responsibilities on multiple websites. And we wanted to make sure that an editor could log into any Drupal site and make sure they knew where to go, how to find what they need to edit, and have the features that they needed available to them. This module requires a bunch of basic Drupal modules to make sure they're the same across all sites. It contains some basic configuration around users' roles and permissions. It makes it really easy for developers to know where to go to change things and to deploy one change across multiple sites, which also makes it more affordable for them in terms of long-term maintenance.
Yeah, and one of the features, so all the images here in this slide are sites that share the MTC profile, and a lot of them have similar priorities. They might have a different groups of stakeholders, but they're all responsible to have meetings on their site. And they often treat meetings the same way. It makes it much easier. And so it's been incredibly effective for us to be efficient and keep costs low to have this MTC Drupal profile. All right. One thing they really needed with their content, and I'm going to show you the site in a second because you're going to see how much they write. They have a ton of content. They have writers on staff. They edit the content. They are very serious about keeping it up to date. And we really needed some options to bring the users down the page. And remember, we have these competing target audiences. How do we take all of this, all of the items that need to be shared about a particular program or group of programs and make it a little bit more interesting and easy to connect for a user-centered experience? Um, so we gave them a ton of options for these cards, and I'll show you those in a second. We also allow them to use tabs and accordions, and throughout the entire process, and for all of these, we're very focused on making things mobile friendly, and also bringing the experience more into 2021 and how the different ways that you can swipe on your phone from left to right, up and down, and different, new experiences for mobile, especially for MTC. So kind of getting them up to date there. All right. What we're looking at here are all the different card options that we built. And this was to, really bring this user-centered experience for them. We have 1-column cards, 2-column cards, and 3-column cards. And you can see each of these cards have different purposes. And we have set a content strategy for when it's best to use these card types. If we scroll down here, you can see we also have some image cards here. And then this has turned out to be a great card option. I know you can barely see the background image in these cards down at the bottom, but it just has provided such a reprieve on the user's eyes, and they are using these for more kind of like, did you know, facts, kind of information, really geared towards the public. And it's been a really useful process for us. The other thing is, we gave them a lot of color options. Of course, all of these colors pass accessibility, and this is, we have a set of dark and we have a set of light. And so all of these cards have these color options for them. So they have the opportunity to make some impact on the page with color. Now, every person knows that, well, most web developers know that it's challenging to give the client or content editors free rein with colors. So what we did to kind of help preserve the integrity of the design was make default colors for everything. So we have a color strategy here where all the cards in the about section by default are blue. All the ones in the planning section by default are purple. But and we tell content editors to leave, just leave the default in place so they don't have to think about which color it's going to be. They don't have to think about whether it's a light or a dark, because we've set the card types to establish when it should be light and when it should be dark. But the option is there. So if they have a need to change colors or use colors in special situations, they can change the color as they need. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at some of the cards in action. This is, at first glance, a basic page on the MTC site. And I'm going to quickly hover over our mega menu, and you're going to see the color strategy in place here. You can see we got this teal color over here in this promo box where it says Clipper. And funding, we're going to more of a green, and then we have orange. So here's where we're starting to introduce this color palette. If anyone remembers the old MTC website, we put the colors really front and center. And in our discovery, we realized we got a lot of feedback saying that it was too much. So we really simplified it, but they did want that color because remember, we have to really have a site that feels approachable. And so we did keep the color, but we used it sparingly. I'm going to scroll down. Here you can see this background image card in use. What is micromobility? We have, these are kind of used as promo boxes, and so are these. But you could just see, um, just the improvement, how it's bringing the user down the page. And then let's see. Don't have an example of tabs, and I think we can move on to the next slide, Jen, unless you have something you want to add.
No, I think that's great.
All right. Another thing that they wanted is tools that help them create compelling content. So like I said, they have writers on staff. They're always looking to find ways to communicate effectively with the public and have it be understood, the impact that some of their programs have on their lives. We introduced this content type called stories. And, you can see here, and I can go to one, I'll go to it in a second. Well, maybe I should just hop over there right now. Hang on, I didn't prep that screen, so give me 1 second. Great. Okay, so we have a desktop version and a mobile version. You can see here that we don't have the main navigation here at all. This is meant to be a piece of content that's shared on social media. This is meant to be a standalone piece of content. If users want to find out more about MTC, they can go ahead and click on the logo and they'll get back there. And then obviously, really the only thing you can do is advance through the slides or share it. So this is really meant to tell the story, make all the complicated information really simple for them, and also showcase some beautiful photos. They do have great photography to work with. So this was, and then, as we just launched the site, I think in July, and we're hoping to use data visualization with this feature as well, working closely with their data visualization department. Let me hop back over here. The other thing is we have a ton of related content on the site. And, content that has interest drives curiosity, and we want to provide more things for them to click on that are related to what they're viewing. Let's see here. This one, yeah. And so this is just an example of some related content over here. We've got related news. We also allow them to have related documents. We have galleries, related galleries that they can put on a page. And you'll see in a second, we'll get in the back end how we make it easy for the users to add these to the page. Here you can see a good example of their headline one column card. They just released Plan Bay Area 2050, just a few weeks ago. And so they're really wanting to promote it. And hence there's this large promo box for it. And then, of course, you can just get a sense of how much content they have. It's just a lot. So it's been great to have these card options for them to really break up the page. And I'm realizing, Jen, we didn't stop for any questions. Does anybody have any questions? I'm assuming no.
I'm watching the chat and there haven't been any there yet. But I would say if anyone does have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat as we're going, and we'll keep an eye on that.
Maybe now is a good time to jump into the back end to look at how we're utilizing cards. So I'm going to go ahead and, what is my example page? Not this one. Hang on. Here we go. So I'm going to go ahead again and edit. And here we are in the back end. This is our basic page type. And, this is pretty standard stuff up here for page content. And we have our body copy. But here's where we get into our card groups and our related content. So I'm going to just toggle onto this, and you can see all the list of card groups that we have available. And then after their card group, they can add a text section. So if they want text below the cards, they can add an accordion or a tab group. And there definitely is some education required so they can be thoughtful about it. And we definitely had to do that, I think, in development or when we were creating content with them. We had an editor putting 2 or 3 accordions on a single page, and it just didn't work. So there was a little bit of educating them on how to use this thoughtfully. Down here is our related content. So we collapsed this in effort to make this not too overwhelming for them. And here you see we have our related news, and it's got a predictive type um, option here, so we can just start typing to find anything we need. And then how this works is anything in our news section that's been tagged as Plan Bay area will appear as related news on the page. Same thing for our gallery here. All of this content has been uploaded previously, but now they can just choose it. And the same thing for related documents and related videos and related meetings. And then they can go ahead and collapse this. And then let's just take a quick look at editing this. So remember, these are card groups. So we have these different card types, but let's open this one here. So here you can see in this particular card group, we have 2 text cards. And now we can go ahead and just edit these. So it does have this open and collapse approach, which has been really useful rather than just keeping everything open on the page. That experience is overwhelming. And, when content editors are overwhelmed, they will not use the features. So we tried to be as thoughtful as we could as making this as easy as possible. Here are the color options. Again, like I said previously, we set the default, but they can, if they need to, change the color depending on if there's a program that really needs some brand identity support. And then you can just keep adding cards here. Let's go ahead and just open this one. Oh, here's our background image card. So also all the card groups can have a title over it. So sometimes they need to, an anchor title to kind of bring the group together or to make it feel cohesive, and a title is needed. But here you can see this is that background image card, which is this one down here. And you can see we don't ask the user to edit the photo. They just upload it, and it automatically adds this tint. Sorry, just lost it. It automatically does that, which is really helpful. I don't think they would ever use the tool if they had to actually make, edit the image to be that way. Jen, is there anything else you want to highlight here?
Yeah, we did have one question asking if the setup for using paragraphs, the tool we're using for handling cards, if it was time consuming. And I would say that it wasn't that time consuming to build because we set up a pretty comprehensive spreadsheet ahead of time and figured out which fields would be reused across cards and which cards would be reused across card groups. And so we were able to share a lot of that configuration. So by the time we were setting up card groups, a card group just referenced a text card, and so it was either a 2-card group or 2-column group or a 3-column group or a 1-column group all used the same paragraph type. So it was we were able to save on configuration because we reused a lot of the pieces.
Great.
Someone also asked if we did a lot of custom twig templating for paragraphs, and the answer to that is yes. What we tried to do is do all of the templating on the cards that were recycled, so not the card groups, but the cards themselves. And then the card groups are just responsible for defining how many of those were in a row, so we could make that responsive through the card group. So again, trying to save time on both configuration and theming by recycling those pieces.
Okay. Let's move on to meetings. I'm doing this card, I think. Okay. Meetings is incredibly important to MTC. It is, they follow Brown Act requirements, which means they have to show in advance on their homepage meetings for the next 7 days. They also have to have agendas posted. They do utilize Granicus to input their meetings, and they also use Granicus to do their agendas and their minutes. So we do Granicus integration. And I'm going to hand that over to Jen in a second, but essentially we pull the meetings from Granicus into an XML, and then we run the meetings importer. And Jen, can you take it?
Sure. So the meetings importer is something, as we said before, we use on multiple websites. And it's a pretty complicated tool. I gave a session on it at DrupalGovCon last year. Granicus is notoriously hard to get data out of. They have several different APIs you have to leverage to get the data you need. And so what we ended up doing was scraping both of their APIs to create a feed. And that feed was something that our site can then ingest. So we get one source of data for Drupal to pull in. And as Drupal pulls in that data, it will create new nodes for every meeting, and it will populate every field with the data that's in a specific place in the Granicus system. And we have the feed running every 15 minutes, so that if somebody makes an update in the Granicus system, our website should be updated no more than half an hour later. But if there is something that needs to be changed early, the Drupal interface still allows editors to edit a meeting and add an agenda or update information or mark the meeting is canceled. So if they do need to make a change more quickly than the importer runs, they can. They are aware that when the importer runs, it will overwrite their change if what Granicus contains is different. But if there are additional fields on the meeting in Drupal and there's no data coming in from Granicus, that information will remain. So if they needed to add something special just for the web display, they have the ability to do that. The importer is very complicated. In Drupal 7, we used feeds and a whole bunch of feeds plugins to handle it. We looked at the state of feeds for Drupal 9 when we started working on this and decided it wasn't quite ready for everything we needed. So we wrote a custom importer that works the same way and copied all of our custom logic from the Drupal 7 feeds extensions that we'd written and integrated them into a custom meeting importer module that handles this for Drupal 9. Every site has its own configuration file, so you can define what the fields are in the Granicus feed and where they map to in the Drupal system. So we do have some differences across sites about how we handle specific things, and we have the ability to include that in configuration for each one. There's one question here. Did we look into using the migrate framework for importing? I think we did and decided not to use it because we didn't want any of the migrate tools on our production sites. I don't remember the exact decision for that, but we did something pretty similar. Meeting company. So the service that we use for handling meetings is Granicus. I'm not sure if we would recommend them. I think they are the only game in town. So that's why we're using them, and this group is using them for so many of their different sites. It's basically provides a really great service where they will record your meetings and you have an agenda and they will link a specific point in the agenda to a specific time in the video recording. So that if you want to go back and watch this meeting later, it's really easy for the public to get to a particular part of the meeting. So all of their tools, as you can see here, are a little dated. Same thing with their APIs. It's all a little hard to work with because it's old and been around for a while. But the service they provide is really valuable, especially for organizations that are required to have all of this information available to the public.
And they do need the ability to make manual changes occasionally if Granicus is down. So we do have it set up for them to edit things manually if needed as well on top of it. So there is a lot here. And so the MTC profile really helps us manage all these options across sites. I think someone had a question about the MTC profile, Jen.
I think they wanted to see the features that were in it, but I'm not sure how much there's actually to see because most of it's in code. It essentially contained a folder of default configuration, and that includes content types and fields. We want to be consistent across all sites. It includes user roles and permissions. We want to be across all sites. And anytime we start a new MTC site, that will be the first configuration that gets loaded into the site. It was the same thing when we were doing the migrations. We would migrate from Drupal 7 and then import this configuration and make sure that we had the same underlying structure across all sites, so that we knew that we were migrating. You know, if things didn't match in Drupal 7, we were migrating them to a system in Drupal 9 that was going to match. It also includes a bunch of customizations to forms. So on the meetings page in particular, there's some custom handling with how the meeting selection process works. So we've got some form alters in there, some specific views, so just a whole bunch of stuff that we had the same way across multiple sites. Another question, how are you dealing with configuration for sites after they launch? So once a site is built, all of the configuration is managed in code the same way it would be managed on any other site. So if we had a change, for example, to meetings that needed to happen across all four sites would get that same configuration change in code, but that configuration change would also be reflected in the profile so that the next time we update a site, or create a new site, it'll start with that same profile change. So hopefully that makes it a little easier. You know, if it's the same diff across 4 sites, it's pretty easy to repeat, but we do have to retain that change for future. There's also some custom handling around our documents, some other content types that are consistent. We have like a news headline importer that also gets used on several sites. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. We just make sure the content types and fields and configuration for those are consistent. Question Q&A tab. Are the meetings imported as nodes? Yes. Every meeting comes in as a node and the import minutes. And there are several thousand meetings that get parsed on every run through. Also, Carrie, we should check this out. There is a Granicus alternative posted here called Slip.
Yeah, we will. Yes.
Thank you for that. A couple of other things about meetings, just while we were talking about it. They have a map display. So not all of their meetings are at their main office because they manage meetings for a bunch of different organizations. They meet at various different places. And so every meeting has a little map on it. This was great when all of the meetings could be attended in person. But at the beginning of the pandemic, of course, nothing was attended in person anymore and everything had to switch to remote. So we've recently added a bunch of changes to the meeting system so that a meeting can come in marked as remote and the address and the map will disappear from the meeting page. It can be marked remote attendance possible, and it can be marked in person. And so we have the maps and addresses show and hide based on the ability for the public to attend that meeting or not. Here's an example one with a map. And we did that by adding a special checkbox to meetings that allows, that will check or uncheck that display. The box will control this display of the map and the address, and the importer will check or uncheck that box based on the content of a general field in Granicus. It's very hard in Granicus to add custom fields, but if they put a very specific string of text into their location field, we would be able to parse that and check or uncheck that box. So the configuration in Drupal is a lot more intuitive than the configuration in Granicus, and we've had to add a little custom handling based on that. Again, question, how often does the import run and what happens where something changes in Granicus? The importer runs every 15 minutes. And the editors are aware that if they change something in Drupal and Granicus has a different value, the Drupal content will be overwritten from Granicus. So Granicus is the source of all data. We do have additional fields in Drupal that don't exist in Granicus, and those can be changed safely, and those changes are retained. So meetings are never deleted on the Drupal side. They are only updated every time the meeting runs on a importer runs on a different pass. Let's see. Do we have anything else about meetings we want to share? I guess we wanted to mention like there's a lot of different documents that can be attached to a meeting. Um, their documents come in a bunch of specific formats, like there's an agenda, there are minutes, sometimes the agenda and the minutes are grouped together. Meetings often have something called a packet, and there are sometimes other documents that need to be attached. And so we wanted to make sure that editors always knew where to put these documents when they came in from Granicus. They come in a certain place. They're also ending up in a specific place in Drupal. And then recently we've also added the ability for meeting recording links to be posted. So after a meeting, we can drop in a link, and transcripts for the meeting. So if someone needs to read what happened in that meeting rather than watching a recording, that information is also available. So anything that was added in Granicus, after the meeting's over, will also get updated in Drupal. These meetings can continue to get updated over time, which is why we check 1,000 of them every 15 minutes. But if someone needed to post something like a transcript or a video recording manually, they can definitely log in and do that. Am I forgetting anything about meetings?
No, I don't think so, but someone's got a question about the mega menu.
So the question was, how do we do the mega menu? All of our sites are using a contrib module called Smart Menus. Smart Menus is a JavaScript library. It's the most popular touch-friendly, responsive drop-down menu that works with the Bootstrap framework. And we have used a Drupal module that includes the library. And for the mega menu, the module doesn't necessarily include support for a mega menu, but the JavaScript library does. So we were able to provide a Twig template that redid the markup to match the way the JavaScript library would expect a menu, and then drop our little menu panels into that template. So we have a view that runs the panel on the right, and then we have the regular menu system that runs the columns on the left, and all of those get included together in a template file, a Twig template.
Okay, I'm going to go on to the next slide. Accessibility throughout the entire site build, from planning and content to design, accessibility was at the forefront of our site goals and mission. And I have a little picture here. We did, I'll get to that in one second. We realized quickly through our efforts that started in 2019 that really content editors needed to be trained so that they could maintain accessibility, whether it was just filling out alt tags. And we did put some requirements in place, but also just training them on how to write it. We tried to be as thoughtful as we could about heading structure and share that knowledge with the content editors. But one of our most exciting things in regards to our accessibility journey has been working with the Center for Accessible Technology. They facilitate user sessions with folks that have different levels of, or different kinds of impairments and different levels of abilities. And we really tried to create an experience that works well for all people. But this picture really represents something that one of our testers has low vision. And this is how this square represents their screen view. This is how big things are while they're scrolling. And it really puts quickly into perspective how normal web standards kind of fall out the window when you realize a user is having this experience here. So, Jen, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, so the Center for Accessible Technology is fantastic. They let us watch a lot of the sessions that were happening, and we could ask questions and we could help if people were getting stuck, which was really great. They had the same script that they ran for everyone. And as a developer, it was so eye-opening to watch people struggle with the kinds of things that we see every day and assume is just how people interact with web. You see different people interact with it differently, and it changes everything. The people that we work with there are really technically savvy, so they were able to give us HTML and specific attributes that could solve some of our problems, which was really valuable. Then we could test them, apply them and retest them again, which is also really great. So having people there who are experts not only in usability testing and managing the whole process, but also the technical standards to be able to help us out was great. So yes, I would definitely say using automated tools is not enough. That's where we started before we did the testing. After doing the testing, it becomes very clear where the problems are. So they're amazing, and I really liked working with the group. If you guys get the chance to work with them, I highly recommend it. Oh, another thing I just want to point out, we were also working with our editors. One of the most important things we had to retrain them on was how to write alternate text for images. A lot of people just write the name of the thing in the photo and don't describe what the photo is conveying. And so we spent a lot of time working on that. Our editors wrote fantastic descriptions for the photos. And a lot of the feedback that we got in the accessibility sessions were people who were so surprised at the quality of the image descriptions. And so that sort of spoke to me about how their normal experience must be, where the things that were like, okay, we finally got this right, was something that they remarked on so well. It's like, wow, how many sites do they visit on a daily basis that get that wrong, that they feel like they need to comment on it. So that was just also something I was really pleased with, and has motivated me to fix on all of my other sites too.
Well, that concludes our presentation with you guys. We have a few more minutes if there are any other questions.
It's pretty quiet in the chat. I would also say, if you think of questions later, you're welcome to reach out to myself through Hopin, or Carrie. I guess we could drop some contact information here if we needed to. But yeah, it's been quite a journey with this website. The group of people we work with has actually been really great. And I think that they helped us come to a really fantastic end product. So I'm really proud of this site. Thanks, Tim. It was our pleasure to present today. We look forward to seeing what else is going on. Oh, Q&A tab. Thank you. Back to the nav menu. Can you talk about doing a dual main nav? Oh yeah, so we did have two menus. There's the big mega menu across the top of the page, and then on basic pages in the sidebar, we had a smaller menu. Actually, I think that was probably across the whole site. And that did present a little bit of trouble on mobile because we had to find a way to put both menu toggles in there. But it was something that we felt pretty strongly about, that the top level menu shouldn't show too much depth, but we still needed to give people the context of where they need to be on the page. So the sidebar menu provides that additional level of where am I now, as opposed to what are the main categories that are available on the site. Carrie, I don't know if you want to talk any more about that, but we end up using the menu block module for the sidebar one, if anyone's curious about how we did that. So this is just menu block with a little custom JavaScript for behavior.
Yeah, you can see this is our main hamburger. And then, you know, the site only goes 4 levels deep, but, you know, sometimes they have a lot of, pages in one section. And so we didn't want to force the user up here every single time. So we added this submenu here to get them quicker into the content that's in this section.
Hope that answers your question, Dash. We also had the same sidebar menu on the Drupal 7 site before this, and it seemed to be really successful. So that's also some of our experience there leading us in this direction.
Tim has a question. Was any usability testing done before or after implementing those two menus? We haven't done any usability testing after. However, their old site, we did have a 2-menu option, and we got a ton of information on how people were using the old one, which informed the decision we made here. And the old one was not working. So the mobile, it made this deep, heavy site a little hard to navigate on mobile. The language switcher.
So we're using a service called Localize, and there's a JavaScript library, Localize.js. There's also a Drupal module called Localize.js. I think, Carrie, you might know more about this than I do, but I think what happens is all of the translations for the page are automated, and then the folks at MTC have a chance to review and approve them. And once the translations get approved on their end, the entire content of the page is changed with JavaScript. So we don't have any localization on the Drupal side. It's all happening in JavaScript through an external service.
Yeah, and this menu is pretty tight. Spanish tends to be a little bit longer character count in their words. And so when they do make changes to the menu, we do ask for a quick review so that everything keeps working as expected. Another feature we added since we're all still here, I guess this was a legacy option on the old site as well, but we have 9 different placements for this text box here in the carousel. They can go top left, middle left, top right, middle left, middle center, middle right, and then bottom right, and so on. And that just helps them be able to control where or I guess it allows them to have more options when they're considering photos they're putting here so that the subject matter of the photo can be in different places.
One thing I'd also like to say, just since everyone is still here, is that this group in particular has been really supportive of Drupal, where every time we need to work on something that doesn't exist, so for example, the smart menus module, the localized module, they've been really great about saying, we'll make the module for this website and then throw it up for the Drupal community afterwards. We have a lot of bugs we found in various different parts of Drupal. They're really great about allowing us to fix the problem for everyone rather than only for this site. So they've been a fantastic contributor to the Drupal community and supporting all of their various web projects too. So it's great to see that sort of community support in our daily work. All right, I think we should probably go ahead and wrap this up. We are over time. Thank you all for sticking around for some extra questions at the end. But Tim is also reminding us that the keynote starts in 10 minutes. So maybe everybody should have a minute to stand up and stretch and get some coffee if you want, or snacks or lunch before the keynote.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.